Hi guys, my name is Kenzie and welcome to Watercolor Tutorial. Today we're going to be painting the snowman. So this one is pretty straightforward and pretty simple. We're messing around a little bit with some wet on wet techniques with shadows to really bring out the white for the snowman, and then some wet on dry techniques. I hope you guys enjoyed it and send me some photos of your completed work. Let's get started. Let's go over our supplies. So right here I have my 2 water cups. I have one for warm, one for cool water. I have here my dryer. I got this on Amazon, and I'm able to dry my layers very quickly. I have my tapping cloth where I tap excess water on here handy. I also have my Winsor Newton watercolor palette. You'll see all of these colors that I use inside your ebook that's Destroy a Nice Brush. I have right here my bleed proof white. This is my Dr. Martens. I use it all the time. It's a very pigmented white. It's awesome. These are the brushes that I use all the time. I love this particular brush because the bristles are very soft and I can get a very nice pointed tip so I can get lots of detail. So the size I use a lot is size 8, 12, and 4, and this is a silver black velvet brush. I also recommend having masking tape. Any painter's tape from the dollar store works perfectly fine. I like to paint my paintings down. I like when it leaves a border, and it's really nice if you have an extra cardboard sheet handy that you can move your projects around and not be tied down to your desk. You'll also see I'm a messy painter, so this has definitely helped contain some of the mess on my desk. All right, let's jump into painting our snowman. So if you guys have never painted with white before, this can be pretty tricky. So my first piece of advice is make sure you're starting off really light, because if you start too dark, you're not going to be able to layer and it's just going to throw everything off. So I shadow with a lot of blue and purples with snowman. Let's clean off my palette really quick, and I'm going to add a lot of blue in water. So you'll see here I have a nice wash, and in this one I'm going to add a little bit of purple. So wash is just when you have more water than you do paint. So you'll see it's really light, very fair. And while I'm at it, in this one I'm going to add a gray. So to mix gray, you just add water and black. And now you have gray. Okay, so to start off with this snowman, I'm going to come in and I'm going to start to shadow right underneath my scarf. So you'll see here I have a harsh line. I'm going to get rid of that. I have just water on my brush, touching just the edge. I'm not going into the middle or where my scarf or body is. I'm just touching the edge, and I'm going to blend that out. When I find that I'm just dragging paint, I'm going to get rid of the paint on my brush. And there you go. I have a really nice blended snowman so far. I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to come underneath my stick area with a lot of blue here. Again, I have a harsh line. I'm going to get rid of the paint on my brush. I'm going to just tap around the edge right here to get a really nice blend. And you'll definitely see the gradients of like a darker blue to a medium to basically nothing. So that's the goal here. And you'll see I've started really light. Really light, which will make it easier for me to do more layers. So I'm going to come in again and blend that out. And blending it around. Okay, I'm going to let this part dry. So I'm going to work on the top of my snowman. So I'm going to do the sides to give the illusion that the snowman's face is curved, just like that. I'm going to come underneath my snowman's hat, and I'm not going to worry so much about trying to stay in my lines and not painting over this part of the nose and all that fun stuff. Okay. So I'm going to add another layer to this. So I'm going to grab my dryer. I'm going to dry this. Okay, cool. So I'm also going to come in, add a little bit more blue to this, and just touch around the body just a little bit. Again, I can just blend it out if I want to not just have it be such a dramatic line. And I can even come in and touch it while it's still wet with a darker color as well, and it will just kind of blend really nicely because that was wet. Okay, so I can come in and create a second layer, which I want to do right underneath. And I'm going to blend just this out with water. And different parts up here, I'm going to blend as well with just water. Okay. And now I can come in with a little bit of purple, just a little bit. I don't like to add just too much of the purple, but it helps it just not be so dark. I find that when I mix in the grays and the black, it's very overpowering. So I like to just do a little bit of purple, and it just helps. Okay, so I am happy with how this has turned out. It's super light, airy, exactly what I was going for. So I'm gonna dry this. I'm gonna come in now with a nice light brown for the arms. Following my ink marks, and again we're going to do the wet on wet technique. So while this is still wet, I can come in with a darker brown, add a little bit of black to it if you'd like, and just touch around different areas like that, and just kind of let it dry. Come around and repeat what I just did. I always do that. I am right-handed, and I always start with the right hand, and then I run the risk of smudging. So now I'm awkwardly placing my hand to do the left side, but I am repeating what I just did, trying very hard to not smudge. Coming in with my darker color now for the wet on wet part. My wet is this bottom part, the brown color, and then the other wet part of the wet on wet is my black, a blackish brownish color that I'm using. Okay, to speed up the process, I'm going to dry this. And to really make this pop, we're going to come in with a darker color as well, and you're just going to do some nice lines. It's pretty dark for me. I'm going to come in and just create just some little lines to create some nice texture with our branch. I'm going to dry this. And I'm going to repeat what I just did with an even darker color. And you'll see how this slowly will just kind of start to look a little bit more realistic. Have some nice depth to it. There we go. So I'm pretty happy with that. So I don't have orange in my palette, so I'm going to mix up a nice orange with, my cadmium yellow is a little muggy. So with some yellow and cadmium red, mix up a nice orange color. It's a little too, there we go. And I'm going to apply my carrot snows. So you'll see here I started off really light. I can even come in and scoop the top to create a nice highlight. I'm going to mix a little bit more of a deeper color. I'm going to touch around just like that. Blending it if it's just a little too escaping. And I'm going to dry this. I just mixed a little bit of brown into my orange, and again, what I just kind of just did with my sticks, I just did with the nose. I just applied some streaks with the very tip of my brush, blending it out with water if it's just a little too dark, and it just gives a little bit of texture to the carrot. So I'm going to come in and do the stones. So this time, I don't want to go quite as black. So I'm going to mix in a little bit of brown with my black. And I'm not going to stick to like a perfect circle, and I'm going to be leaving what we call white space. That is the paper to shine through, and this is going to be a natural highlight. So I'm going to come in and just create just little wonky stones. I'm going to be leaving white space on all of them. Doesn't have to be big. I'm gonna do one right here. And by big, I mean a big gap, just something. I'm gonna come in and do the eyebrows. And I am gonna dry this. So again, similar to what we just did, this is the wet on dry technique. This is how we can create some layers with our piece. I just mixed in a darker brown color, and I'm just gonna touch around different spots. You're gonna also see that I'm letting that first layer also shine through. I'm not completely covering it. I'm gonna give the eyebrows a little bit more love. I'm just touching different points while that brownish mix is still wet with a little bit of black. And I'm gonna dry it. So I am again going to do a blue hat. I love the blue with the snowman. I think it looks really good. And I'm gonna work in sections with the scarf because I want there to be a natural crease between the part that wraps around the snowman's neck and the part that's dangling down. Okay, so while this is still wet, I am going to grab a different brush and I am going to scoop up to get a nice highlight. I'm going to come now and do my hat. Again, I can come in and scoop it, get a nice highlight going, and then I can also come in and mix a darker blue, and I can come in and shadow. So this neck part has actually already dried, but up here I can come in while it's still wet and touch around. And to blend that out, again, we're just using some water. I'm gonna get this part before it dries, just touching it at the bottom part and blending it out just like that. I'm also going to use this darker color and really just shadow the crease just a little bit. Again, blending this part out with just water. Okay, cool. So I'm going to dry this. Scooping up again for a highlight up here and using my darker color, I can just come in and just kind of tap around, shadowing different parts of that part of the scarf. So for the scarf portion, I did just mix a little bit of a gray and I did a little bit of a fluff to it. And again, we're just messing around with the shadow part. So I'm just using the natural shadow for like the pom-pom part. And I'm leaving lots of white space, and that just gives the illusion that we have pom-pom. It's all about the shadows when it comes to white. I come in and just kind of touch that bluish part just a little bit. Come in here, just make some parts just a little bit darker. And I'm using the very tip of my brush, just doing some little streaks towards the center, maybe just doing more of like a wash. And I have this bleed proof white that I like to use, and this can just sit on top of any color, and I'm going to come in and kind of just do some flicks going into my blue, and this will just kind of help break up this line that I have coming into my snowman just a little bit, even bringing it into my hat. Bring it in here as well. You can even do some bleed proof white in your snowman's little rocky area. Okay, so I'm really happy with the design. I don't think I'm going to do anything to the scarf. I actually love the blue in itself, but I do feel like it's a little bleh. So I'm going to come in with a wash of color, and I'm just going to add just a little bit more depth to my little snowman. And just repeating what I have been doing, applying my color, and then just using water to blend it out. And again, this will turn out really nicely if you just try your very, very best to not go too dark. If you go too dark right from the get-go, it's just going to be way too hard for you to try to layer and have a nice white snowman. You can even shadow a little bit underneath the nose and some of the rocks as well. It's a good idea. Okay, there we have it, Christmas snowman.